What's up, y'all? Deathload is here, back with another Eversoul video. This time I want to do a quick thoughts and opinions on Kanna, the latest fairy soul that came out, and share my insight on whether you should pull on her. For those of you who are here just to get quick information on whether you should pull on her or my opinions, I have included some timestamps that'll help you get to that portion of the video quickly. Now, before we get into my opinions on Kanna, these opinions are based on my experience with her in testing her out in the practice room. In total, I would say probably put in about 3 to 4 hours in practicing with her and testing her out, which is, quite frankly, not a lot of time. We still have a lot to learn with Kanna, but I've found some interesting things with her which I want to share later on that isn't really listed in her skill description that I found pretty intriguing and could potentially change the way she functions. So far in the time that I had spent practicing with her, I've tried her out in the battlefronts, the guild raids, in the fairy type tower, and the depth gates, which I consider the depth gates to be some of the harder content in Eversoul, considering that the enemy souls are equipped with artifacts and keepsakes. And I somewhat practiced with her a little bit in the Tower of Origin, although I feel like the unlimited depth gates is enough to practice with her in regards to the enemies having artifacts and keepsakes equipped. As for opinions on PvP with Kanna, don't really care too much about PvP in Eversoul, or PvP in general for gacha games, so I won't be sharing that. And the final thing to note is that I didn't pull on Kanna's banner. I actually got a copy of Kanna through my friendship summons and one of my epic soul shard summons. I do have a reason for that. I'll share the reason why I didn't pull on Kanna's banner later on in the video. So some of my testing was based on not only a legendary version of Kanna, but also the Kanna that is provided by the game in the practice room that gives Kanna an Origin plus 5 grade, an Origin artifact, and keepsakes that are maxed out. In this instance, they gave Kanna a full attack set of Origin keepsakes. So let's check out Kanna's kit now. Kanna is the fairy type. She is a ranger class. She specializes in crowd control. Her attribute is dexterity. When it comes to positioning, she stands comfortably with Mephi, Honglan, or Lizalot when it comes to range. Now for her skills, we're going to go over her passive first, most prominent portion of her kit. So what her passive does is anytime Kanna does a noble attack, she applies a stack of Angel Shot and Devil Shot. And after reaching 6 stacks of this Angel Shot and Devil Shot, she applies an effect based on which shot gets the 6 stacks first. So firstly, if she gets 6 shots of Angel Shot, she charms the target for 5 seconds. If that target is immune to charm, it deals additional damage, and this attack is also influenced by Devil's Touch, which we'll be getting into shortly. Devil's Shot, once it gets 6 stacks, applies the Devil's Touch debuff for 12 seconds, and this basically increases the total damage received of the target by 15%, and allows Kanna to get 40% additional damage to the target that has a Devil Touch. At higher levels, this passive also gets a mana recovery for not only her normal attacks, but also her 2 sub-abilities that she has, which is Angelic Pierce and Devilish Scatter. Next prominent skill is her artifact, called Emotional Trigger. This one took a bit of testing for me to understand what it was talking about. My initial reaction when I read this was like, ooh, wow, she gets improved duration and effects on her buffs. But it doesn't state anywhere that it's her buffs, and I've already tested this, and it definitely does not impact the buffs that she has on her currently. I've also tested other effects, and from what I have gathered, it seems to only work on the effects that she applies, which is the charm and the Devilish Touch debuff that she applies, which, to be honest with you, is pretty upsetting. But I don't know if there's any other activated effects. It's just odd that they say all activated effects and the durations, like there's more than 2. There's only 2 effects that she has. I think they should have reworded this to all of her effects that she applies. It's just a very poor translation, I believe, and kind of misleading. But yeah, for my testing, that's just what it affects. It affects only her charm and her Devilish Touch effect. The other thing that the artifact skill provides is additional attack for Kanna, and at Legendary Plus, this effect gets increased to 20% for her attack. Her activated effects and durations are activated by up to 35%, and at Origin, this changes to 50% effects and durations, and her attack gets increased to 25%. Now on to her first sub-ability, which is called Angelic Pierce. Angelic Pierce is basically a line AoE that applies 2 stacks of Angel Shot, and at higher levels of this ability, anytime Kanna activates Angel Shot with Angelic Pierce, it instantly activates Devilish Scatter and applies 3 stacks of Devil Shot. Now keep in mind that when Angel Shot is activated, this is when the charm is activated from her passive. So let's move on to Devilish Scatter, which is her sub-ability 2, so we get a bit of context what Devilish Scatter does when it's activated. Devilish Scatter is a 11 meter 30, it says 30 degree arc. From my testing, it's like a cone AoE. So I don't know why they call it a 30 degree arc. I've never heard that term before, I don't believe. But it's basically a 30 degree cone that she shoots. With Devilish Scatter, she applies 2 Devil Shots. At higher levels, if you activate Devil Shot with Devilish Scatter, it'll instantly activate Angelic Pierce and apply 3 stacks of Angel Shot. Now keep in mind that Devilish Scatter is a 12-second debuff that she applies to the target that increases the incoming damage received to that target. This total damage received also helps your allies, which is important to note. The final effect from this debuff is it allows Kanna to do 40% additional damage to that target. Now let's move on to her main ability, which is called Bullet Barrage. This is basically a vicinity AoE and attacks the nearest enemy, applying 2 stacks of Angel Shot and Devil Shot. At higher soul levels, when she uses her main ability, this activates the Angel Shot and Devil Shot regardless of the number of stacks that she has on the target. Next up is her ultimate, called Rampaging Bullet. This is basically her main ability, except for this time it targets the soul with the lowest HP, and it applies 3 stacks of Angel Shot and 3 stacks of Devil Shot. At higher soul levels, when she uses her ultimate, it activates the effect of Angel Shot and Devil Shot regardless of what stacks that soul has. What's important to note is that they do preface that as long as the main target is hit with this attack, those status effects will be applied, regardless of these stacks. However, if other surrounding souls are hit with this attack and do not have the stacks needed to activate the Devil Shot and Angel Shot, then those effects will not be activated. For example, if my main target is Chloe, and Clara is standing next to Chloe, and the Chloe has 2 stacks of both Devil Shot and Angel Shot, and Clara only has 1 stack of Angel Shot and Devil Shot, upon using my ultimate, Chloe's Angel Shot and Devil Shot effects will be activated if she's my main target. Meanwhile, Clara, with only 1 stack of Angel Shot and Devil Shot, would get 4 stacks of Angel Shot and Devil Shot. Will not get those additional effects activated unless she gets up to 6 stacks of Angel Shot and Devil Shot. And that sums up Kanna's kit. When it comes to comparisons, Kanna's pretty close to Nicole, which is another Fairy Ranger type soul. She has AoE prowess, she applies debuffs, albeit Nicole doesn't have crowd control like Kanna does. In comparison to her stats with Nicole, Kanna does have more defense and HP compared to Nicole, but Nicole does take the cake when it comes to having more attack. Now Kanna does kind of make up for her attack loss due to her artifact, so just keep that in mind. Now onto my thoughts, my experiences, and a couple of weird things I found out with Kanna from testing her. Now one of the weird things that I found out with her is she has sort of a buff thief type thing going for her. It seems to only work with passives. So far from what I tested, she took Suni's buff, Clara's, and Haru's. So I'm not sure if this is a bug, or if this is just another mistranslation with her abilities. And it's just not mentioned that she also can take the buffs that that particular soul can apply to allies. And what I mean by that is, let's say for example, Kanna is targeting Clara, and before the charm goes off on Clara, the enemy Yuria buffs Clara with a 30% attack buff. Well, upon charming Clara, it's only going to take the passive buff that Clara can give to her allies, not Yuria's buff. And it's not every single buff. I've tried this multiple times and I can't get it to trigger even on Clara's heal as well. So further testing is absolutely needed, and we'll have to see how things go. I think this may be a bit significant in the long run. Now, apart from that side note, I will say that Kanna is an incredible damage dealing AoE soul. Her AoE damaging capability is nuts. I wouldn't say that it's the best, but it's damn near up there in regards to other souls that have that AoE prowess. The AoE souls that come to mind are Claudia, Hunglan, Naya, Nicole, Ayame, and Vallana, to a certain extent. I do believe that Vallana requires a bit more care compared to the other souls because of the fact that Vallana's a melee soul, and crowd control really messes up Vallana and is best utilized with other support souls that can keep her alive. The other important standout characteristic is the fact that she does get that devilish scatter activated pretty often, which again helps increase the damage dealt by the rest of your ally souls to that target. So I do believe that she has potential in AoE guild raids or in evil soul subjugations because of this. So that's it for the positive takeaways. Now, my general thoughts about the rest of the effects that she provides. From my testing, I personally don't think that she should be labeled as a crowd control specialist. I think that her charm is something that comes second, and it's more about how much damage she's dealing with her AoEs. And the charm effects are something that's just the side effect that happens when it happens. The charm effect is a very odd crowd control effect in the game. So, first thing to note about charm is that it does not prevent a soul from generating mana. So in Eversoul, when a target is slept or stunned, those souls generally don't generate any mana from their normal or sub abilities because they're, well, stunned and slept. Well, when a charmed target is charmed, they continue to attack, generating mana. Not only that, but they could still be attacked by your allies, further generating even more mana over time. Whereas a stun and a sleep, the only mana generation that target is taking is from getting hit, not from the normal attacks or sub abilities that they would have done. So already that's a net negative. Now it does prevent them from using their main abilities, and that's pretty big, but eventually once they come out of that charm, they will use their main abilities. The other thing to note is there's an interesting side effect to being charmed when an ally taunts a target. So, being that Kanna is a fairy soul, Chloe actually doesn't mesh well with Kanna. Now, I don't know if this is an oversight from the Eversoul devs, but this has been prominent since the game's launch, and charm in general, so I don't think anything's gonna change. But anyways, what ends up happening is, let's say Kanna charms a target, and they were in the process of running to the backline to hit their allies with normal attacks. Well, if Chloe uses her taunt, she's gonna taunt that charmed target back to Chloe, completely negating the attack the ally portion of the effect of charm. So having souls like Chloe, Petra, Lute, and Suni in your party, in my opinion, is a detriment to Kanna and the effects of charm. Now my final thoughts on her artifact, I had mentioned it earlier, but the wording can be very confusing for players, considering that it says all activated effects and their durations are increased by 20% when Angel Shot and Devil Shot are at 6 stacks. I think a good portion of Eversoul players probably read this and thought that this was like buff effects on them, or maybe effects like defense down, slows, attack downs, and sleeps were also affected by this, because it says all activated effects. Well, turns out it's not all activated effects. It's all of Kanna's activated effects, which is the charm duration and the devilish touch debuff that she applies. The effect durations will be increased, and the total damage received on that target is what's going to be increased by whatever percentage you have activated with her artifact skill. It definitely had me retrying stages and checking durations over and over and over again just to make sure that it was only her effects. And so far, I've tested it with electrified targets, slept targets, stun targets, defense down, slows, and evasion down. None of those effects and their durations were increased, which is a bit disappointing, but at the same time, when I think about it, that would have been extremely strong, but I just kind of feel like there needs to be a bit more with her in regards to helping out her allies. But anyways, that is my thoughts on her and her kits. She is a very good AoE damage dealing soul, with Charm being the added effect to her AoE prowess. She is definitely a selfish soul that requires a lot of attention in regards to leveling up her keepsakes, artifacts, and her grade. I do believe that if you plan on pulling for Kanna, you need to have her at least Origin grade, with at least a Legendary Plus artifact, preferably Origin, if you really want to bring out her AoE prowess. Now is the big question. Should I pull for Kanna? This question is very difficult to answer for all of you, and it's all based on your progression in Eversoul and the souls that you have already attained. For new players, I believe that she is an extremely good AoE damage dealing soul that will carry you through the majority of the content of the game. Mainly the 5v5 battle progression floors, like Battlefronts, Fairy type gates, Unlimited gates, Dimensional Labyrinth, and Hall of Memories. She'll also be pretty good in Tower of Origins, but this gets pretty difficult at higher floor levels due to the fact that enemy souls get keepsakes and artifacts. Now keep in mind that she is a selfish soul, meaning that you need to invest a lot into her in order for her to do good in the party. In my case, the legendary Kanna that I have is not going to be useful at all for AoE content, due to the fact that I already have other souls at higher grades and higher artifact levels that will help out much more than Kanna will. Which brings me to my next point. For those of you who have been playing Eversoul for a while and already have souls leveled up, I personally believe that you don't need to have Kanna in your party. The damage increase that she gives for the rest of your party members, I don't think it's going to be as significant as you may think. And really the only thing I can think of Kanna being useful for in the content of Eversoul is most likely guild raids with AoE targets or evil soul subjugations where Charm could potentially help you on a particular fight due to the groggy gauge. The final thing to note is that very soon we're going to be getting another new soul by the name of Joanne. She's rumored to be a support undead soul. There's no confirmation on this, but based on what we've learned from Joanne in the main story and love stories, she's supposedly a doctor or nurse of sorts who caretakes souls who visit the hospital, which may suggest that she's going to be a healer or a buffer of sorts. But again, this is rumors, we don't know for sure, but if in fact Joanne is a support undead soul, that is going to be very important for your undead party or undead type progression, because currently undead only have one support soul, and that's Prim. There are other things you also need to keep in mind. Is after Joanne's release, we're going to be getting the Quarter 2 announcement that will most definitely have information about the next Angel Soul. At the beginning of the year, we had gotten Eve, a Demon Soul, and it's been customary for there to be a release of a Demon Soul, followed by an Angel Soul, followed by a Demon and an Angel, and so on and so forth. So after Joanne's release, we should be getting an Angel Soul, but again, this is not definitively, and things could change. And then the final thing to note is that last year we had gotten a school event. I believe it was in the month of April, that had Lindsay, Claire, Mephi, and Yuria. We did get the outfits for Lindsay, Mephi, and Claire, but we never got the outfit for Yuria, because at the time, we didn't know that Yuria was going to be a playable soul. I think most of us knew that eventually we were going to be able to get Yuria as a soul, which means that Yuria could potentially be coming back for the Eversoul school event. That's if it even happens. Considering that a lot of these events are being reran, there's a pretty good chance that we will get Yuria as a pickup banner. And let me tell you, Yuria is miles better than Kanna. She is used in just about every party formation when it comes to progression in Battlefronts or any other content in Eversoul. She is an extremely strong support character and requires a hefty amount of Everstones in order to invest into her, considering that she's an angel soul. So with all of this in mind, I believe that most players should skip on Kanna's banner. With that being said, you won't make a mistake if you pull on her banner. Again, she's a really good AoE damage dealing soul. If you like her appearance, you like her personality, you like her design, then by all means, pull on her. You won't go wrong. Just keep in mind that you need to invest a lot into her if you're going to be pulling for her and wanting to utilize her in your party formation. Alright, well, that is the general overview and my thoughts on her kit and whether you should pull on Kanna. This final portion is basically my opinions on Kanna and the appearance that she had and the appearance that she has now. And also what I think about her personality and how that meshes well with what has been done with her. So, for those of you who don't know, Kanna was leaked a very long time ago. I believe it was before Eversoul's release that a good portion of souls were leaked, and Kanna was one of them. Kanna looked very, almost angelic looking, very colorful, very vibrant. She wore a bow, and it fit the theme of the Cupid's arrow, which is the name of her artifact. Now, we don't know what Kanna's personality was of the past, but judging by the animations that we're seeing, she seemed to have that sort of lively feel to her, just like the Kanna of the now that we have. Now, there's a reason why the developers changed to Kanna's appearance. It's due to the fact that Kanna is affiliated with the Chalar Arms Corporation, which is the same corporation that Renee and Miriam are part of. The theme of Chalar's Arms Corporation is it's very militaristic, and they utilize a lot of guns and machinery. They're very high-tech, from what it looks like. So for me personally, between the Kanna of the now and the Kanna of the past, I believe that the Kanna of the now fits Kanna much more than that of the Kanna of the past. I have no issue with the current Kanna, apart from maybe her hair, and I do believe that the artifact should have been saved for the Kanna of the old. I think the Kanna of the old should have been named something differently, and the artifact should have also gone to the Kanna of the old. And the Kanna of the now should have gotten another artifact that's not associated with Cupid's arrow. I think Cupid's arrow is more befitting of the old design of Kanna, and considering that Cupid was an angel, I think Cupid's arrow and the theme that Kanna had of the past would have fit her perfectly as a upcoming angel soul with the Cupid's arrow artifact. With that being said, I think this goes hand in hand in how Kanna's personality doesn't fit her very well for a militaristic unit in the Chalar Arms Force. After completing Kanna's love story, we learn that Kanna's personality is that of a TikToker looking for fame and fortune by luring men in and having them donate to them. or getting into a relationship with a wealthy man and having that wealthy man support their expensive lifestyle. And that's pretty much Kanna in a nutshell when it comes to her love story. Also, I just can't buy that Kanna isn't the Chalar Arm Corporation, especially when you compare her to Renee and Miriam. Like, both of those souls are undoubtedly in the Chalar Arms Corporation. Kanna sticks out like a sore thumb. While she's over there with the hobbies of hairstyling, she loves to sing, she likes manicures, shopping, making sure that her outfits match perfectly fine. Do you really think that there's someone like that in the Chalar Arms Corporation? It's not to say that there aren't women in the military that do like doing those things, but those women do a really good job at hiding those things and are taken very seriously while they're on the clock on military premises. At no point in Kanna's love story did I ever feel the seriousness in her voice. She was always very vibrant, very screechy, whiny, and excited at all times. I wouldn't even trust her to guard my back while out in a military drill. Now, they do mention that one of the reasons why she is in the military was because of her weapons, and the fact that she could not only cast a love spell on them, but cast a hatred spell as well. The funny thing about that is whenever Kanna uses her gun, apparently she's shaving hundreds of years of her life, which is so odd. This means when Kanna is AoEing all the souls, and remember, all of her abilities are AoEs. She's shaving thousands of years of her life for shooting her gun. What? And speaking of gun, you couldn't come up with a more generic name for a weapon and a buff for the weapon. Angel gun and devil gun? Are you kidding me, devs? That is the best you got? For a dual gun that has the capability of charming enemies and also being able to make them go into madness of sorts, how are you gonna call a dual gun an angel gun and a devil gun? That is the most bland name I have ever heard any game name a dual gun. It could have taken other creative ways of expressing those two guns. Hell, I'll give you 3 examples. You could have called it Jophiel and Lucifer. Jophiel being a god of love, Lucifer being the fallen angel, or the devil gun. You could have called it Shooting Star being the white gun, or Blood Moon being the black and red gun. Hell, you could even called it just any name, like Akuma and Akasha. Something more befitting other than just calling it an angel gun and a devil gun. These two guns could have had so much more personality for this character, but they went with such a bland and generic name, and I just don't understand why. Well, anyways, I hope this didn't upset anyone. This is my opinion. This is just how I feel about her design and her characteristics and how well she meshes with her kit. As it is, this is the Kanna that we have, and there's nothing else we can do about it. We'll see how things go with her, and we'll see if she gets any significant buffs in the future. I want to remind people, I do like the way the Kanna of the now looks like. Just the whole artifact thing is something that's sort of a missed opportunity. Also, her love story outfit is really cute, and it's one of my favorites. Just wished her personality was a bit different and more befitting of a dual gun soul with the red and white accents. I feel like she could have been a cute, badass soul, but instead they just made a cute soul. But that about wraps up my opinions of Kanna. I do hope that this helped you guys out in determining whether Kanna is a perfect fit for your soul roster. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. What do you guys think about Kanna? Do you think that she's a good soul? Do you think that she meshes well with her kit? And has she been of any help to your party if you did pull on her? I thank you kindly for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and I hope to see you in the next Eversoul video. Have a nice day, and bye-bye!